Hello there. Welcome to Just the Dis. We talk about Blu-rays here. My name's Brian. And I'm going to do a little bit of a Kino Lorber recap for this video for some stuff that's been coming out the last month or so. And I'm going to start with some cult titles that most of these I've covered in individual reviews on the channel, so you can go back and look those up. And see me speaking more at length about them. But I know not everybody watches the individual reviews, I understand. So the bigger pile reviews tend to draw more viewers. So in case you missed them, I'm going to talk about them again here. I'll start with Times Square, which is a really enjoyable cult item from 1980, directed by Alan Moyle, who did the Pump Up the Volume film as well, which has a lot of similarities to this, including a radio DJ who is sort of in communication with his listeners and is sort of anti-authoritarian. And in this case, it has to do with two girls, Pammy and Nikki. One of them is a street kid played by Robin Johnson. The other is the daughter of he's like he's a city councilman or something like that. And he's trying to clean up Times Square. He's trying to clean up 42nd Street, which we see in full, in all its glory at the beginning of the film as Robin Johnson's character is walking down the famous 42nd Street or in Times Square area. And so like they end up in a room together in a hospital, and they're both getting this specific kind of brain scan done or something, and they end up sort of like hitting it off. And the Trini Alvarado character is not happy, and so she ends up sort of taking a shine to the Robin Johnson character, and they run off together and have this sort of adventure in New York City. And it's one that I like very much. It's got a really cool soundtrack with lots of rock and punk acts from the time, including the Ramones and others, Talking Heads, all kinds of stuff. Really good soundtrack, which is I think part of the reason it's taken so long to get a Blu-ray release. But this one is a new HD master, a new 4K scan of the original camera negative, and this is as good as this film's ever looked. This film has not been available streaming for a while. The DVD's been out of print for some time, and this is just really clean. Obviously the grain looks nice and everything looks good. A lot of the film is shot in less sunny days, so it doesn't have a brightness except for the neon of New York City at night. But the transfer looks really good. I was really happy with it, and just happy to get this movie. It's just sort of this cult gem that I've been a fan of for a long time. These two girls, kind of becoming, it's like a not quite Legend of Billie Jean kind of thing, but they become sort of this phenomenon in the city. And it also has this alternate artwork. And it comes with an audio commentary from the DVD with director Alan Moyle and star Robin Johnson. Very cool to hear their recollections of the film. And then there's a new commentary. It lists Kat Ellinger, but it also includes Heather Drain. The two of them are perfect for doing a commentary of this type, and it's really good, and I really dug it. So a really great release, one of my favorites in the past month or so from Kino. Nice to get Times Square on Blu-ray finally. Another cult item, this is a double bill. Abominable Dr. Phibes and Dr. Phibes Rises Again, both by Robert Fust as the director, who was a director that I was aware of, but didn't fully give the credit that I should, because he does a really nice job with both of these films in terms of not only tonal balance, but camera placement and just general direction and blocking and just making shots interesting. Like he really makes these movies better than they should be, and they're interesting because the idea is that Vincent Price plays the titular Dr. Phibes. He is he is on a vengeance mission to get all of the doctors that were involved in his wife's death. Basically, she went to the hospital and died during a medical procedure, and he holds everyone that was there responsible, so he is systematically killing all of them. And it's one of those things where it's very sort of tongue-in-cheek, but he does do some elaborate things in terms of the setup of the deaths and so forth. And so you get sort of a pre-Jigsaw type character, that's doing these elaborate things to kill these doctors and such. And he doesn't really speak. He's got like a tube sticking out of his neck that allows him to speak, sort of, but he doesn't really move his mouth. It's a really interesting character. And then ultimately you see his face has been damaged in a car accident, and it looks kind of messed up. But so this is both movies on separate discs, and we've got a lot of extras here. Now these have come out, I want to say, from Arrow and from Scream Factory in the Vincent Price box sets, but you're getting some additional stuff here in the I want to say, I can't remember how this works, but basically the Robert Foose commentary and one of the Justin Humphries commentaries is on the Scream Factory version. I think the Tim Lucas commentary for Dr. Phibes Rises Again is exclusive to this disc. Don't quote me on that. And then there's another Justin Humphries commentary. He wrote the Dr. Phibes Companion, a big super fan of the film and a good commentator for these movies, both of them. But it's a really good character for Price. He really makes a meal out of it, and so it's a solid double bill. Very enjoyable stuff for that. Next up we have 4K. In the Heat of the Night, directed by Norman Jewison from 1967. Landmark film, came out in a time when civil rights was heating up in this country, and it spoke to those issues very directly, about a detective from Philadelphia, played by Sidney Poitier, who gets roped into a murder investigation in a small town in, I want to say, Georgia or Mississippi. I can't remember now which. When he's just literally waiting for a train to go and visit a relative or something, there's a murder in this small town, and a racist cop by the character of Warren Oates, played by Warren Oates, picks him up and brings him down to the station. No questions asked, just assumes you're the one, and then it's slowly revealed that he's a cop, and then the chief of police of this town, played by the great Rod Steiger, sort of ends up involving him in the investigation, and it's a really, really great movie. The dynamic between Steiger's character and Poitier's character is remarkable, and it's less antagonistic than I remembered. It's more sort of protective in a way, but also indignant, and there's just so many emotions, and a lot of it plays just in Sidney Poitier's eyes. And I just think it's such an incredible character and incredible performance by Poitier. And Steiger just, I don't know, he's doing a lot of interesting stuff, just from chewing gum and changing the speed at which he chews his gum depending on what he's doing. There's a lot of subtleties that he's bringing to this that I think are interesting, and he does a great job. But it's a better film than I remember, and it has two sequels. They Call Me Mr. Tibbs in 1970 and The Organization in 1971. And both of those are actually included on the bonus disc of this set. So that's pretty cool. So you get a 4K, which looks very good, I think, even though it doesn't have HDR. I think Haskell Wexler's photography looks nice as presented. It's almost all, I think, exclusively location shooting in a small town in Illinois, if I recall. So it's not studio bound, and you can feel the difference in the atmosphere of the film when it's filmed at these real places, and the lighting is a certain way, and it's got a almost verite feel to it. It's really cool. So really nice set, and has those 2 films included. Commentaries, Norman Jewison, Rod Steiger, Lee Grant, Haskell Wexler. I think that one's on the Criterion Blu-ray. Steve Mitchell, Nathaniel Thompson, and Robert Mirisch. I think that's new. And then, we got a couple featurettes. Some of those are on the Criterion Blu-ray as well. One on specifically Quincy Jones and his score to the film, which is wonderful. So yeah, really nice 4K from Kino. Next up, we have a heist film called Grand Slam. This is from 1967 as well. It is about a school teacher working in Rio de Janeiro, played by Edward G. Robinson, who puts together a plan to rob a diamond company that has its headquarters across the street from the school that he works at, and who has every 6 months a big deposit of a giant, a good-sized briefcase full of diamonds that I guess is worth $10 million. Doesn't look like a lot of diamonds, but ultimately it's this big deal. And so he goes to a friend of his in New York that he knew as a kid, and he's become sort of a gangster type, gangster adjacent at least, and he helps him set up a team of people, including Klaus Kinski as a sort of military guy, and he gets a safecracker and a playboy to try and charm the woman who has the key to the vault room, and that's played by Janet Leigh. So he's got like a team of 4 guys that go down to Rio and try and set up this heist. It's going to take place during the carnival, which happens to coincide with the one of 2 times that year that the diamonds are put in that place, and everything's closed because of carnival, and so they'll have a couple days before people will know that diamonds are missing, or at least that's the plan. And it's got all that fun setup of getting the gang together, and then it's also got some fun tension in the heist sequence, which is about 30 minutes towards the end of the film. So an enjoyable heist movie from 1967, and looks nice on this Blu-ray. Very nice widescreen 2:35:1 movie. I dug this. I'd seen this before on DVD years ago, but definitely enjoyed this rewatch. Commentary with Howard S. Berger, Steve Mitchell, and Nathaniel Thompson. More of a podcasty kind of conversation, but good. That's fun. And following that, another sort of heisty movie, but also Raiders of the Lost Ark type thing. This is Treasure of the Four Crowns, directed by Fernando Baldi, starring Tony Anthony. And this also has a heist sequence in it, and it also has a getting a gang together sequence. But it opens with a really wonderful castle, sort of kind of like the temple at the beginning of Raiders. Tony Anthony's character, what's his name? JT Stryker, goes into this castle, and he has to avoid snakes and wolves and crawl down some vines and just all kinds of obstacles. And all of it in 3D, by the way. This is a restoration done by 3D Archive, which they've done some stuff with Kino in the past, year or so, and done a really nice job. And this is no exception. If you have a 3D TV, you can watch this in real 3D, but it also comes with, the anaglyph version, and you can watch that with the glasses that are included with the movie. And the 3D definitely helps it. Fernando Baldi and Tony Anthony had done Coming At Ya previous to this. This is in 1983. Coming At Ya, I want to say, is 81 or 82. And it was a sort of 3D spaghetti western, and I think it did well enough that they wanted to do this 3D adventure movie, which is influenced by... It definitely looks like Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's some things in it that are very Raiders at the beginning, even a metal ball that's kind of like the boulder. But yeah, that opening castle sequence is just so much fun and so silly in terms of the 3D. A lot of it is just throwing things at you, poking at you. But it's really a fun Raiders ripoff. I was going to say the screenwriter was influenced by the guy who wrote the books, the author of the Alan Quatermain books, King Solomon's Mines, Alan Quatermain and the Lost City of Gold. And those in turn influenced some serials that were coming out around the early part of movies, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, I can't remember. those serials then in turn influence George Lucas and become part of what's pushing him to make Raiders. So they have the same DNA, but again, there's also some direct stuff they're doing that is like, we're ripping off Raiders too. So it's this mix, and it gets crazy by the end. There's some really bonkers stuff that happens in the ending sequence that I'm not going to get into. But it's more Temple of Doom than anything. And Temple of Doom hadn't even come out yet. But I'm just saying, like, the weirdness of it just gets nuts in that sort of Italian way. But a really enjoyable 3D movie and a fun Raiders riff, if you will. And very nice to see it in 3D. I'd only been used to seeing it on bootlegs. So this is a really nice version to check out if you've never seen this before, or if you've seen, I think there was a Shout Factory DVD that was released that wasn't even 16:9. It was widescreen, but yeah, so this is the best version you'll ever see of that movie, and that's great. Next up, we have Film Noir, The Dark Side of Cinema 6. And this one includes, as you can see in the back here, Singapore, Johnny Stool Pigeon, and The Raging Tide. Now, Singapore is one that stars Fred MacMurray and Ava Gardner, directed by John Bram, who had also done noir stuff like the Lodger remake. He did Hangover Square is fantastic. One of the best noirs around. I really, really like that one a lot. Kino's put that on Blu-ray as well, and The Lodger. So this one's sort of about... and these are all brand new 2K masters, I believe. Yeah. So it's about this guy, played by Fred MacMurray, who comes back to Singapore and sort of remembers his relationship with this woman played by Ava Gardner pre-war in Singapore, when there was an attack by the Japanese and they were separated, and he assumed her dead. Now he comes back to Singapore to take care of a little business. There's some matter of some pearls that he's dealing with, and there's a prefect to police kind of type. There's a little bit of Casablanca thing happening here, although it's not 100% that. There's a little of those vibes I could see being, compared. But Fred MacMurray finds that Ava Gardner's still alive. She's has had amnesia, and so you've got this whole amnesia plot to deal with, and the pearls, and it's a fun little, noir type story, right? Enjoyable stuff. Commentary by Kat Ellinger and Lee Gambin, a great duo as well. I love Kat solo, but when she's with folks like Heather Drain and Lee Gambin, it's always a solid time. Next up, we have Johnny Stool Pigeon. This one's from 1949. Singapore is from 1947. This is directed by the great William Castle for Universal, and it's fun. It's sort of an undercover drug bust kind of thing, wherein Howard Duff, who I talked about in my review of, what's it called? The photographer one. Oh, I just had it here and now I moved it. Hold on. Shakedown. Great noir that Kino put out before. Howard Duff was husband to Ida Lupino, and I normally don't... I find him a little bit bland, and I think this performance is a little bit of the Howard Duff that I don't love, but it's interesting. He plays an undercover, I want to say like treasury agent or something. Let's see here. Johnny Evans. Yeah, San Francisco-based treasury agent. Goes undercover to break up a narcotics ring. Dan Duryea, who I love, you'll see him there on the left, is a convicted criminal who's dealt in these drug rings. They get him out of jail under the auspices of him helping them get in on a big drug deal, which he does, but he's sort of reluctant about it. And they end up in this Old West resort in Arizona, which is really interesting. Everybody's dressed in Old West outfits and stuff. And Shelley Winters enters the picture as sort of a love interest, sort of a femme fatale. Hard to know what her allegiances are. But it's an enjoyable, build and a fun little, William Castle noir. I don't know. I like to see him do stuff other than, the, monster stuff or the horror stuff or whatever he was doing, It's always interesting to see the other stuff he did, because he did a lot of stuff in his time. Audio commentary by professor and film scholar Jason A. Ney, also nice. But this might be my favorite of the set, ultimately. Lastly, you have from 1951, The Raging Tide. This one also has Shelley Winters. And then, of course, Richard Conte, Stephen McNally, Charles Bickford, John McIntyre. And John McIntyre is in Johnny Stoolpigeon as well. But so this one is about a low-level mobster type who kills another guy, another mobster, and kind of goes on the lam on this fishing boat and ends up sort of befriending the son of the fisherman, who is being punished for he did a joyride in a car or something like that. And then he ends up involving the kid in sort of the racket that he's doing right now. And things get complicated, and Shelley Winters is involved with that. And again, I don't want to give away too much, but it's enjoyable noir stuff. These box sets are always sturdy, solid noirs, most of which I've never heard of in the last few rounds they put out. So that's kind of neat that they keep, and there's another one coming. They just keep cranking these out. So between these and the Indicator Blu-ray box sets, noir fans have a lot to look forward to and enjoy now and in the coming months and years. So yeah, film historian David Del Valle and producer Miles Hunter do a commentary on this one. Also good. So that is the Film Noir Dark Side of Cinema Volume 6 box set. Then we have one that I have not talked about yet, and that is the Francis the Talking Mule 7-film collection. This is a fascinating series with, as you can see, Francis the Talking Mule at the center of it. And yes, that's what he does. A lot of them are wartime comedies. The first one stars, Chill Wills as the voice of Francis, and then he would later be replaced by Paul Frees in some of the later ones, I believe. I can't remember how many are Chill Wills and how many are Paul Frees, but I can speak to two of the films that I did watch in this set. So, you got your slipcase, right? And inside we can see we have Francis the Talking Mule. That's the first one, with Donald O'Connor, who of course would go on to star in Singing in the Rain, among other things. He does the famous Make 'em Laugh bit, which I think is actually touched on in the commentary for Francis the Talking Mule. I can't recall. But yeah, that's sort of a wartime comedy. He is a lowly private who ends up meeting Francis, and Francis continues to give him strategic advice that is sound. And I don't know if there's something supernatural about Francis, where he seems to have some kind of psychic abilities, or the idea is that he's around and he can hear things that other people don't pay attention to him. I don't know. Somehow he gets information that's correct as to like air raids and, enemy attacks and things like that. And so every time he tells the Donald O'Connor character about one of those things, he goes and reports it to his superior officers. They start to act on his advice. And then, of course, they ask him, how did you know? And he continues to say, well, this mule told me. And they continue to throw him into the psychiatric ward, sort of makeshift psychiatric ward of this little base they have in the jungle. And so we keep seeing him like in the sequence where he's building a basket, and he keeps building the basket bigger and bigger. And it's kind of a funny gag. Although it does get old after a while to keep see him continuing to say, the mule told me, and not learning to be like, I don't know, it just came to me, or come up with some other reason. And eventually he has to involve like the higher ups. John McIntyre is in this as well. John McIntyre, by the way, is one of the old man from Cloak and Dagger. That's with the old man and the couple. If you remember that movie, you'll recognize him and his voice immediately. He's in a lot of these Kino movies, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and so it's funny to see him pop up in just a ton of them. And he plays like a general, and then you have to get the general involved, and Will Francis talk to the general because, of course, he doesn't talk in front of other people, blah, blah, blah. So that's a lot of the essential comedy of this, is like this sort of double take, like, what? Did he just talk? Or you're crazy because you heard him talk, and we're going to treat you like a crazy person, and you have to kind of navigate that. And so, it's fairly cookie cutter in a certain way. But again, I didn't see all of these. So you have Francis Goes to the Races here. On the second disc, you have Francis Goes to West Point. Francis Covers the Big Town. Then on disc 3, you have Francis Joins the Wax. Francis in the Navy. Like I said, a lot of these are wartime comedies. I think wartime comedies are fascinating in that they are, for me, ostensibly just this propaganda films about, like, isn't it fun to be in the armed services, and we need your help, and it's all kind of good times, when in fact, that's not the case. And I just think they made so many, and I think it's such an interesting phenomenon, especially when you put a talking mule into it. It just becomes even more ridiculous and strange. The last one that is in the set that I dug, but I can tell you some reasons why I would have liked it more, and that is Francis in the Haunted House. Now, that's one that stars Andy Rooney. A lot of these star Donald O'Connor, but then this last one stars Andy Rooney, and it is, it's got the classic Scooby-Doo. It's like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, this sort of castle, and it's sort of haunted, and there's some murders happening there, and Francis tells Andy Rooney's character, and of course the cops think he's crazy. He tries to predict some murders, and or he solves one murder, and they're like, wait a minute, how did you actually know about this? You probably did it. And then so, like, he's a suspect for the cops, and Francis continues to try and help him get out of it. There's not enough haunted castle stuff as far as I'm concerned. However, the film does have Timothy Carey, which is a nice touch, although he's not in it enough. But it's very Scooby-Doo, very, very much. That's from 1956. And Paul Frees is the voice of the donkey there, the mule there. And I think I love Paul Frees' voice. You'll know it immediately. He's the voice of the haunted house at Disney World and Disneyland. And he was in tons of cartoons. Just got a great voice. And he's perfect for Francis. And so that works for the movie's favor. But like I said, ultimately not quite my bag, but still fun. But I mean, look at all these features. Commentaries on just about every one. I think each one has a track. Lee Gambin, Anthony Nelson, Lee Gambin, Stacey Lane Wilson, Stephen Vagg, Toby Rohn, Eddie Von Mueller. Lots of commentaries, lots to be discussed in these films. And I know that these films have their fans, so I'm sure this is going to be a nice surprise for folks that dig these movies. And it says newly remastered in 2K, which I think means all of them. So they're looking better than they've ever looked, and all together in one set. That's Francis the Talking Mule. And then just a couple from W.C. Fields, continuing the W.C. Fields love from Kino. Man on the Flying Trapeze, among his better films, and I love all his comedies, honestly. But this one's pretty great. And this one features him, another 2K master. He's a henpecked husband who... This one's just got such an interesting setup, and the structure of these Fields films is so fascinating to me because they would just take forever on a gag. Like the opening gag is like, part of it is he and his wife trying to go to bed, and then some robbers break into their basement. One of them's played by, I want to say, well, Grady Sutton is like this layabout type character. Anyway, I'll get into that in a second. But part of this, it's break in to the basement and they drink Applejack, which is, apple cider that's gone fermented and become alcoholic. And the two guys start getting drunk and then singing in the basement. And there's this whole thing where the wife and W.C. Fields are talking about, like, should we call the cops? W. Fields goes down there with the cops. Then everybody's drinking Applejack and singing. Then they take him to court, and the court arrests him for having Applejack as opposed to the guys who broke in. And it's just sort of like continually getting put upon getting parking tickets and then getting another parking ticket from a different cop for not moving his car when he told him to move it. Just like those kind of frustrating scenarios. And he lives with his like new wife and his daughter and the stepson, again played by Grady Sutton, who's just like layabout who won't get a job, and this whole plot with him at the bank, and it's bizarre. He works at a bank, I think, or something like that, and yeah, I'm getting lost in the plot. It's even too hard to explain, as simple as it is, but it's very funny stuff. He's just very put upon the whole movie, and he does a wonderful job with it, and his daughter's always sort of sticking up for him, and it's very sweet. It's actually one of the sweetest movies that he ever did, and I think it's really, as a father who has a daughter, it's a truly touching movie in that way, but still very funny. Just lots of bad stuff happening to W.C. Fields, and he does a great job. So, Man on the Flying Trapeze, commentary by, Wayne and Schuster take an affectionate look at W.C. Fields' vintage documentary. That's cool. And that is also on You're Telling Me, which is from 1934. Man on the Flying Trapeze is from 35. And this one, I'm trying to remember what this one's about. I want to say he's like he's got a daughter who wants to date this guy who's like a little higher class than them. They're sort of a wrong side of the tracks family. He's an inventor who has come up with the idea for a puncture-proof tire, and he's very low class, and so there's this whole plot of like him meeting this woman on the train who's actually a princess, but he thinks that she's faking it, or he just thinks she's some regular woman. He just happens to stumble into her car and tells the story of how his daughter's ashamed of him and how sad he is about his life. And she stops off in the town where he lives and comes to ask for him. This is actually the sweetest movie. They're both sweet, but this is the sweetest one. And she asks for him by name, and the whole town, who looks down on him, suddenly sees him as like this upstanding citizen. And it's really very funny and incredibly sweet. Directed by Earl C. Kenton, who also did Island of Lost Souls, one of my favorite Universal horror adjacent movies. But this one's very funny and sweet and has lots of great W.C. Fields gags. One where he's just trying to tee off at a golf course for like 5 minutes, and he keeps missing or getting distracted, and it's really fun and very warm film. But I dug it. So that's You're Telling Me. So that's a little catch up on the Kino stuff that's been coming out in the last month or so. Just wanted to make sure you saw it. If you like watching the videos with lots of Blu-rays discussed, hopefully you enjoy something in this stack. And thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.